Hi, everybody. Make sure I don't run out of energy. Okay, I think everything is working. Yep, I think I'm on YouTube there. Okay. Make sure I don't. And see if I can get on Facebook so that I can see everybody's comments. Thank you so much. I know it's really late. It's 1:30 in the morning. It just can't be helped. And I'm going to do the best I can with this breaking news because it's very important in the vicious repatriation negotiations for our son's remains. It's really important. 1,935 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room there on Fort Bliss. You've got that right. It was like a code red. It was internal. Matter of fact, Leilani Hart called it a code red, right? She wrote a paper on that it was a code red. And he was taken to the arms room because it's a soundproof room, and his life was taken from him. And then his body was stolen off of Fort Bliss and trafficked, dismembered. They exploited him. They like to exploit people even after they've taken their lives. They like to exploit people with through the funeral homes and through mortuary operations and cash in on benefits and humanitarian aid and such. They have no they just take you into a hell, right? Because they have no boundaries. They just will stop at nothing for power and for money. And this group is absolutely connected to the media operation along the border called the Borderplex, El Paso border area, and Juarez, Mexico, which is that's a city, and that's in Chihuahua, Mexico. And this uh, funeral home and also the newspapers, the media that's there is controlled. And the main person controlling it is Woody Hunt. Okay. And we have laid out our evidence for that, and we're going to lay out even more evidence for his control over the media. And the media is then the psychological operation, the asymmetric warfare tactics against the people, so that he and his Mormon faction and cartel FTOs could exploit the whole borderplex area in every which way. Just, you know, um, so we have been documenting that evidence, those crimes, and we have been uh, filing them. And it's all really coming together now where people can understand what has happened. And, when it, I don't know if you've ever watched Pollyanna. In Pollyanna, it's not so evil like Woody Hunt. Woody Hunt is pure evil. But, Pollyanna is this young girl, and she goes to a town, and the town is absolutely ruled by this very stuffy old woman. And even the church is ruled by this stuffy old woman. which is, what's happening in El Paso too. It's absolutely uh, s- s- uh, slowly happening in El Paso too. Um, but, in Pollyanna, this stuffy woman, up to no good, wanting to pad her pockets and control the people. This is absolutely a psyop, an asymmetric tactic from this woman's pen. She used to pen the sermon and then hand it to the topics of the sermon and hand it to the priest and preacher and say, this is what I want you to tell the people today, or on the Sunday. And this is kind of like, it just ruined the whole town until Pollyanna came and called them out. And that's what Richard did. Richard came to El Paso and he called them out. He absolutely called them out. They retaliated because they're evil and they took his life, but his spirit is indelible. His spirit is indelible, and what he did um, is worthy of the respect of every American. And he unraveled all of this. He unraveled all of this, and we're very, very grateful to our son and to his memory for that. And his he's crying out though, right? His remains need to be repatriated, and that is what we're negotiating for right now. It is a very vicious negotiation for the repatriation of our son's remains, and it's moving forward. I can tell you that right now. So you have to have some faith. It seems so daunting, right? I mean, if you would have told me this over 5 years ago that I'd have to go through this, it would be very daunting. But inch by inch is a cinch, yard by yard is hard, right? That's what my very, very good friend, well, she was my teacher, and I consider her a friend, would say all the time, inch by inch is a cinch, yard by yard is hard. So you go through and you push forward with faith that the leads will come, and the truth will be revealed. And that's what we have with Nadal Baim and Bradford Bugado and um, Woody Hunt and Sylvia Brundeforth. Sylvia Brundeforth is very, very important in all of this, along with Connell Witten. And of course, the Mayellas. The Mayellas, that was really a miracle that happened, that we found that family, because they were keeping that undercover, that the Mayellas were the Crucius family, and that it proved that Patrick Crucius was not a white supremacist, did not just randomly pick El Paso, that the media narrative was manufactured, was fabricated to mislead the public. And I think it's going to undo them. I think, it's like the BBC right now. The BBC and their false manufacturing of evidence, manufacturing, splicing history falsely, splicing history falsely, and getting caught. And now they're looking at a $1 billion, that's with a B, $1 billion lawsuit from President Trump. I think it's going to undo that. And I think that this is they're tampering with the media, um, and misleading us, absolutely misleading us in so many ways. And for a short term, they got their fancy houses or their fancy cars, and they could have all of their sex cult activities and everything, because they have a lot of that. Um, uh, for a short time, whatever. But God cannot be mocked, and God is not a buttercup. Um, he is absolutely, vengeance is His, and it's all in His time. and we have to do the work, and have faith that He is going to separate the wheat from the tares, and He is going to reveal the truth to us, and justice is guaranteed. Justice is guaranteed, and that's where we're at. And now we have this absolutely horrible event. It is really a horrible event. It's the execution of many Sinaloa members from a faction of the Sinaloa. I think it's, I don't know what it's called, you know, the cell, that's what it's called, the Salguero cell. A matter of fact, Ruperto Salguero, um, Navarez. So I posted that up, Roberto Salguero Navarez. He is like the leader of all of this, L37, going by L37. L37, you know, interesting, all these little names. But he is said to be the leader of those that were killed. Now, he is said to be in critical condition. Others have said that he also has died. Some say that his son was also shot in critical condition or dead. We'll find out more of the information. There is talk of a kidnapped El Pana kidnapped at the racetrack. There is talk of a subsequent terror attack from this, where I guess they kidnapped somebody, El Peporo, and they dismembered him and dumped him at the Puerto del Tiempo. Yeah. Um, with a message. And the others that we have is Alejandro Antonio. If you know their full name, please let us know. And then Paul Giovanni and Jose Eduardo. And then we have Oswaldo Alonso Sanchez. Some say even Sayez Baca. He was wounded in the face. This is what has been reported. A high caliber gunshot wound to the face. David Abraham Solis Torres, gunshot wound to the right side and left thigh. Jesus Jose Nava Villalobos, uh, Villalobos. I hope I'm saying these names right, y'all. Because it's, almost 2 o'clock in the morning. A gunshot wound to the chest. Benito, he is Benito Molina. He's supposed to be also pretty high up there in leadership. L8-4. Then we have the Vicente El Gulo Para. And then Uriel El Chiquilin, and then El Bora. These are all Sinaloa of the Salguero cell. And it's huge. It's really huge because it shows that Governor Maru Campos, and let me go back and read what happened, okay? Just so all of you know what I'm talking about. So just a couple days ago, on the afternoon of November 15th, 2025, Ciceros Sicarios from La Linea. Okay, so these are cartel members from La Linea that are executioners, right? Stormed the Carril Santa Teresa quarter horse track in Hidalgo del Parral, Chihuahua, carrying out a targeting execution that killed I think it's like 11 people now, okay? 11, and I need to change my numbers, because since this morning, it's changed, as I've read all the articles, so I need to change those numbers. Um, 11 people and wounded, many more, most of whom were members or associates of the rival Los Salguero faction cell of the Sinaloa cartel. The attack turned a popular family racing event into a bloodbath amid an escalating war for control of the trafficking corridor in that area. All victims are presumed members or operatives of this cell and the armed wing of the Sinaloa cartel. That's what that is. They're the ones that have all the guns, and targeted in strategic attack by the rival La Linea cartel. So, yeah, um, I'm going to tweak that a bit, but the thing is that this Sinaloa, the armed uh, cell of the Sinaloa cartel was just brutally wiped out. I don't think all of them were wiped out, but we're talking about top leaders. I don't think that I've read anything ever like this before. So, and we've been reading a lot about the cartel these last 5 years. So, yeah, so the La Linea is saying, "Hey, we're here." But I think that this is more than that. Okay, I think that this is more than that because clearly, um, there is billions of barrels of oil that were siphoned from Pemex. And that was done by Cesar Paneche, the Attorney General, for Chihuahua. Uh, Clearly, um, Maru Campos is using taxpayer funds, $200 million. Okay. You can convert that to pesos, but in dollars, it's $200 million to pay off media to control what your minds think. Um, then, of course, the major scandal that is very important to us, and I think should be to everybody, right? Because Plenitude Narco Crematorium proves that they're tampering with death certificates, proves that they're tampering with hundreds of death certificates, proves that they're tampering with other documents, that they're doctoring other documents, to traffic these bodies and cash in on these bodies. But also, these are victims of torture, and they're also victims of the cartel. And to act as a funeral home or to advertise like that, and then pile bodies up like cordwood, um, rotting bodies, letting the rats eat through these bodies, and not cremating them like they had promised, but just recycling them as unidentified migrants. Yeah, it is, and for the owner to be living right next to Beto O'Rourke, and also having direct publishing influence in the city magazine in El Paso, living in El Paso. Um, when all of this is happening in Chihuahua, Mexico, where clearly Maru Campos, the governor of Chihuahua, is, she has now a failed state. Her leadership has been so rotten, she has now a failed state. And it's very clear that she has a failed state when, you can't even go to a horse race, right? You can't even go to a horse race. You can't even die. Your loved one can't even die without there being fear that there's going to be trafficking, that there's going to be organ harvesting, that there is going to be a ripping out of the body, a baby, all this stuff. What they're engaged in is just hell. That's the only expression I know for this. Um, and of course, our son and his remains are caught up in this hell. So, uh, and is there corroborating evidence that there's a problem? Of course, because there's not a district attorney um, in El Paso, right? There's no district attorney in El Paso, and there's no Um, well, you can just tell with Carlos Manuel Salas, that he is absolutely compromised, right? He's absolutely compromised. And so, if there's no prosecutors or no legitimate prosecutors, then you have the big mess like we have with Mario Ortiz Saroldi, right? Then you have the big mess like you have with Cesar Paneche siphoning the oil. Then you have the big mess like Maru Campos and all of her corpse trafficking, along with, because her mother was part of this. So it's very it's very clear that you have a narco crematorium because you have a failed state. You have tampered death certificates because you have a failed state. You have taxpayer money and $200 million of it uh, being funneled to media to hypnotize you with your own money, right? Feed you lies with your own money. Um, you have the oil that belongs to the people of Mexico being siphoned to be sold back to the state, which it belongs to the state to begin with, but it's being stolen and then sold back to the state in contracts, and then also in Cesar Paneche's private, or not private, but his gas stations, right? His gas stations, selling it out of his gas stations. So it is just so criminal. It is all so criminal um, because they want to control your minds and they want this luxurious life um, by criminal activity. And so there's no fear of God there. It's gonna be really interesting to see this meeting and what transpires at the meeting. Um, so absolutely, Maru Campos, uh, does she need to leave? Is she being pressured right now? Is there a Does she have something that others want? Is this a negotiating um, tactic? Um, because Sinaloa cartel is the Pan party, is her party. So we have absolutely hard evidence connected the Sinaloa cartel, the El Chapitos faction of the cartel, to her. What is La Linea by carrying out this humongous execution of Maru Campos's allies? Um, what is the signal here? Let's not look at the noise. Let's look at the signal. What are they signaling? Beside that, that it is a failed state, and for it to come right after um, the the palace being ransacked, um, and these arrests down there in Mexico City that people are very upset about. Um, and then, of course, it happening in Chihuahua, the unrest because of all the other executions that have been happening, even by those that are sick and tired of the cartel. Uh, and then they get executed, and people are just sick and tired of that. Uh, so, what is really happening here? And I think I'm going to leave that for everyone to think about. We have our opinions. Do we believe it's about Richard? Of course, we believe it's about Richard. Um, but you can, please share your ideas with us. But things are really developing. And, if you don't have a prosecutor, if you have a compromised prosecutor like Carlos Manuel Salas, like James Montoya. James Montoya is not James Bonneau 2028 stamp Montoya. He needs to go. He absolutely needs to go because he's not even legal. He is absolutely an impersonator. Why can they tamper with documents like this? He's only sitting in there because he's tampered with documents. And he has the support of Woody Hunt. If he didn't have the support of Woody Hunt, he wouldn't have the support of El Paso Matters. He wouldn't have the support of Texas Tribune. He wouldn't have the support of El Diario. El Diario El Paso, El Diario of Juarez, El Diario of Chihuahua, El Paso Norte. Um, you know, he wouldn't have the support. He wouldn't have the support of the um, Commission on Judicial Conduct. He wouldn't have the support on the bars because Woody Hunt has infiltrators in those. Sylvia Brun de Firth sits on El Paso Community Foundation, and just until recently, I think it's because there were complaints about her. Rightfully so. She was sitting on the Commission for Judicial Conduct. She was sitting on that board. So, um, and she has huge ties to um, the state bar. She was on there, but she got kicked off. I think she got kicked off, but she got all these golden parachutes. Why? Because I think she's counsel to Woody Hunt. Seems like she's counsel to Woody Hunt because Woody Hunt is the one that pushed her to become the president of the bar. And then she had problems because of her sister, because of her husband, um, but she has direct family contact with El Diario. And that makes, I guess, a cozy relationship with Woody Hunt. Because not only can they hypnotize the minds or mislead the minds of Americans, English speaking Americans, but they want the Spanish speaking too. And that's what El Diario does. So if you're like USA Today or Texas Tribune or all the offshoots of that. And let's not forget about KTSM. And we see that Judge Roger Rodriguez issued a cease and desist to KTSM and that he had filed complaints. Well, what complaints were they? Were they about the Mayellas? I think that's a good thing to find out. That the Mayellas were Patrick Crucius's family, that it proved that the whole Walmart case was botched, that they were protecting witnesses that needed to be witnesses in the case about Patrick Crucius's mental health, his severe autism, his blindness, his lack of motor skills, his, um, you know, where did all this money come from if he had no money in the cup, and why is taxpayers paying for his defense? Um, a lot of this could have been answered by the Mayellas and more questions. So we have the 34th Judicial District Attorney's Office impotent because they can't go after the Mayellas. Why? Who's connected to the Mayellas? Right? What protection are they getting? And then they call a real victim, which they haven't listed her age. And I'm thinking, well, if they don't do that, there is a possibility that she's a minor. And this is the traffic victim that was exploited by Mario Ortiz Saroldi. And the 34th Judicial District Attorney's Office is calling this victim a prostitute. Well, in order to solicit, because that's what they claim is the crime here, is solicitation. But in order to solicit, you have to have a prostitute. And this victim is not a prostitute. She's not a prostitute. She's a victim of trafficking, of exploitation, of the big R word. And so, but where's the prosecutor in this? So this is what is going on right now is the prosecutor's office that they need to get rid of Montoya. They need a legitimate prosecutor. So, and of course, in Chihuahua, the North Zone, they have Carlos Manuel Salas, who's living in El Paso, who has a Texas driver's license, who has a Texas car registration, who has a house in Texas. But he's the prosecutor for the North Zone, which is this is illegal. He needs to live in the country where he's the prosecutor. And he's compromised. So this is, when people say, I want to arrest, you can get an arrest, but who's going to prosecute? And so that's where our focus needs to be on, to get legitimate prosecutors. And that way we can have the arrest will count then. So thank you, Anicia, for coming on so late, early in the morning. It's almost 2 a.m. here. And Laura Rodriguez, thank you so much for all your love and there's just no time to sleep because trying to figure out what happened at this horse race, right? That to put that together, to try to get the truth out to people, and to try to get the meaning of what is happening here and what are the consequences for Maru Campos, because she looks totally weak now. She's totally weak. She's totally broken. She's, created and, uh, a failed state because of her participation with the cartel, with the evilists of evil. So, the responses are going to be very, very telling in all of this. And I think it's a signal. I don't think it's something not to pay attention about. I think we need to pay huge attention to what is happening right now in Mexico. Huge attention to it. So thank you so much. My big messages were the Mayellas or the Cruciuses, and they absolutely need to be investigated. And then, of course, Mario Saroldi is getting this soft glove treatment where the prosecutor's office is calling a victim a prostitute in order to save him. And I think that's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And then, of course, this this war between the cartels, because no civilian was hurt, and I believe no horse was hurt during this. These were direct professional hits. That's what these were. I think that's an intelligence operation. So, yeah. So thank you so much. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing. Bye bye.